if you are back here in like the room that's over here, you can very much hear everything that happens in this room.
Oh, yeah. And on the other side of this wall is a bathroom.
That's the one I'm talking about. I didn't want to give it
Did you not know what it was when you were in there?
I just didn't want to. We're recording now. I didn't want to be like, oh, this is the bathroom, and I can hear everything that everyone was saying in here, just so everyone's aware.
Yeah, well, the audio flow goes the other way, too.
Yeah.
So we can know everything you were doing in there, technically, as well.
There you go.
Well, this podcast will be off to a great start. I think it's going to be a real powerful, life-changing experience for people. I was thinking about when we said, hey, let's reboot our podcast and let's basically just talk about ourselves in a completely self-serving manner and just tell the history of Union over the course of 13 years, which I thought was clever to say a baker's dozen years. Nobody else thought that was super clever. Do you know what a baker's dozen is?
13.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
I knew what it meant.
Did everyone else here know what a baker's dozen years is?
I thought it was 12.
Oh.
No, baker's dozen is 13.
Yeah, baker's dozen is 13.
One for good luck.
Oh.
Is that really true?
Sounded good, didn't it?
It did. It did. Welcome to the Video Village podcast. I'm Dustin. This is
Steve.
Excellent. And this is a podcast about making great video for great brands. I've included some notes here to make sure that we don't get derailed too extensively, but I guess it wouldn't be a conversation with our team without getting derailed very extensively. But we wanted to open the reboot of the podcast talking about Union and over the years. And we thought, what's a way that we can do that provides value to other people and not just like, hey, here's stories about me. And so we thought there's 6 kind of key things we've learned over the years when it comes to production, which have turned into
the 6 Union core values.
Boom.
Is this a pop quiz?
On the spot. All this.
I'm passing so far.
So far winning. And yeah, they became our 6 Union core values, which we talk about and use in terminology. There's Kevin crawling back through. This is one of my favorite things. I think he's cleared frame completely.
You know, I haven't seen him.
That's very impressive. Excellent.
I do see his head now over here.
The best. So can we, without even looking at the sheet, name the 6 core values?
Oh God.
By heart to prove that I'm not a liar.
Who do you want to do it?
All of us. You can start.
Optimism fuels creativity.
Okay.
In order?
It doesn't matter.
You can
Pick whatever order you want.
Measure twice, cut once.
Aesthetic is everything.
Disagree and commit.
Always be learning.
The question is, do you know the last one?
Shoot. The best experience.
There it is.
There we go. We do. We actually know these and care about them. And it's because they've been hard won through blood, sweat, and tears of doing production for the past baker's dozen years of how to actually have content come out good, but not just the final content. It's the process of it. Because I think looking back, one of the things that we've focused on so much is that you could go to a restaurant and have good food, but if you have a terrible experience while you're there, you're made to wait super long. Your waiter's like rude. They forgot the side of fries you asked for extra, and it still came out like you still got it eventually, but it was pulling teeth. And I think that's an experience that some people have had working with vendors or just in any point of life. And we're like, how do we not have that? How do we have it be a great process and a great product at the same time? So let's lead off with the first core value. Optimism fuels creativity. For me, the idea was basically that negativity kills creativity.
Especially like on-set stuff, like directing, you're the leader of the operation, but at the same time, like everyone else is doing their thing.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it is on them to like do it great and be good at that. But it's my job to like encourage them and like keep a positive attitude and like keep things, you know, moving along in that way. And not letting it be a bad experience.
Yeah, you very much set the tone.
Yeah.
That everybody else also feeds off of.
Yeah.
Being the studio, that presence of tone is what everybody else, I guess call it below the line, or the team aligns with that.
Yeah.
I feel like I think about you on set where a problem comes up.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, we just can't not keep moving forward.
Yeah. That was the still motion philosophy that we took, where it was like, they talk about like, something's always going to go wrong on set. That's like everyone has that like horror story of like something like broke or stopped working or is messed up. And it's like, you can't just like cry about it now. You have to move on and figure out what the solution is, what the best solution is in that very moment, and like just keep chugging along.
In still motion, that was a great DSLR 2011 era throwback.
Yeah.
I think those guys are still doing stuff. I don't really see.
Yeah, I haven't looked in a while.
They were if you're watching this, it's fine to pause and Google still motion. Maybe
and they did like a tour. And they went to Lens Pro to Go.
Right, in Boston. Yeah.
And we went up there for that like conference or whatever.
We used to do a lot of those. We've gone down to like, New Jersey and other places. They never
was the creepy motel that you made me stay at.
Right. So what's the cheapest thing when we have absolutely no money?
It was like the King's Inn was like the name of the place.
You're like, I'm so traumatized. I remember it specifically.
I really hope Alex will pull up a picture of the like terrifying dude at the register.
Oh my gosh. To be fair, I think most of the hotels were booked because of the conference that we were headed to, or maybe there's something else going on at the time. Well, optimism feels great to me. Hopefully, if somebody engages with our team from any side of things, a vendor, a partner, a client, there's that level experienced.
Yeah,
I would say. Measure twice, cut once. Core value number 2, and it actually is in order here. So I jotted down a quick note because I remembered, okay, so 13 years ago, Union began its first office in my apartment that was really my grandparents' basement.
Yeah, that one was so we were both coming off working at a news station.
Yeah.
You had quit like maybe 6 months before me.
Yeah.
And I told my parents that I was quitting my 40-hour-a-week job at a local news station to go work in my friend's basement. And my mom's response was, man, I really thought you were going to like go to ESPN or something. I was like, no.
Well, so we're in the basement and, and dude, that was a mess. I'm not I'm not unclean. I would more say I'm messy. I'm a messy person.
I wouldn't say that it was unclean. I would say that we had a lot of things and it was unorganized. That's how I would describe it.
My wife Rochelle would say the same thing.
That's good.
I have been mildly cured of this, but to look back at the photos that we have of that is anxiety inducing. Most certainly.
I feel like too, like you wanted to be scrappy about things, and so then you would get scrappy about something, and then it wouldn't work, and then it would just be an existing thing, like the dolly you tried to build.
Right.
Where like you were like, this is gonna work. Like I'm gonna build a dolly the night before a random music video shoot. I'm gonna get a bunch of like skateboard wheels, and like it's gonna work.
And put it on PVC pipe.
And then it doesn't. Right. And then it sits in the corner.
That's true. I guess because we were talking about this before we started recording, was going to home improvement stores and how you get something back. And I think there's 2 types of people. There's returners, or there's also not returners, right? Whereas like it just kind of sits there. Like I honestly, in my car right now, have some boxes that probably have been sitting there for a month that just need to be dropped off at the post office for a return. But for some reason, I don't notch away the 5 minutes it takes to do that.
So would you say that it's more than measure twice, cut once then? Because then you forgot like the whole like extra part of that. You didn't need to cut, and now you needed to return the thing, and so you just didn't.
I kind of say this to people when they kind of want to skip steps in pre-production, is that it's way too expensive to have problems on production day than it is to spend hours
after
in pre-production. Yeah, or after, or find out what went wrong.
That was like the main reason I even thought about directing to begin with. I never really wanted to be a director. That was never like my goal in college or even like 5 years after that. But like the idea that maybe I could fix those problems or those things that I felt in an edit earlier in the process and have my brain be on the edit when we're in pre-production, that measuring that could happen there could then help my cutting physically.
Is there anything off the top of your head that you feel like were some of the biggest, and I'm putting you on the spot, were some of the biggest, like, we'll call it snafus that you're like, geez, like, why didn't they just do this during production? I don't know if there's a specific story. Maybe it's a generalization.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a generalization of like, you have this interview where someone talks about this and be like, oh, it'd be great if we could see them do that. But that wasn't planned.
Yeah.
But like, then you start directing. You're like, oh, I'm going to pre-interview everyone.
Yeah.
And like the goal would be that they say that, a month before you actually do the interview. And then that way you can plan to then go do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I use that as an example all the time when we're talking about the process when when we're engaging in a project that's going to be driven by an interview story. Mm-hmm. And they're like, why do you need to talk to these people for like 30 minutes on the phone weeks before? And it uncovers so many of those visual ideas that you would have had no idea, where they just randomly go like, oh yeah, well, I just, when I start my day, I ride a tandem bike into the office and, blah, blah, blah. And a really important part of this whole process is like, I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z while I'm packing up my lunch in the morning. And you're like, shoot, like to have like, while they're talking about this story, to like see them like doing this and like engage in the visual story.
I do have a funny story where the opposite of that happened.
Good.
So I did the pre-interview and the person was like, oh, like one of the things that really influenced me when I was like coming up in this industry was all the like long car rides I had with my mentor and like all this like learning that happened during that. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. This is so good. Like we're going to do a car rig. I'm going to put this guy in a car with like who he's training. And we're going to like show how like he then took that to the next step. And then like, on the day, he didn't want to drive. He was like, I don't know, nervous or whatever and didn't want to. Okay. And then in the interview would not bring that story up. No matter like how much I like poked and tried to like get him to like bring that story up. He just would not bring it up because he knew if he brought it up then I was going to make him go drive.
I guess we can't necessarily get people to be honest about what actually happened. That's not something we can solve for.
But I feel like also with Measure Twice, Cut Once, it's then like, even because a lot of stuff that we do is 30s where you're, everything is very thought out prior to that. Yeah. And like, I feel like especially in a hard 30 to like be thinking so much ahead of time and basically have the spot cut prior to shooting it is like almost a necessity at this point because there's just so little you can do in 30 seconds. If I could like take an hour or two and like draw really poorly what I see and like can put it together to a music track that may or may not end up being the piece that we use, we can at least know like what the flow and the pacing is of that. And I think one of the good examples I have of that is that I was doing a spot and I boarded the whole thing out and I put it together and this was like, I did it kind of late in the process. Like I think we were shooting in like 2 or 3 days and before I like put it together and I realized I missed a shot that was like very crucial, like a wide that established like a very important thing that like in my brain it was there the whole time, but like once you see it and even in my crappy drawings that like doesn't actually like explain it well enough. And I was like, oh my God, like I need to go add this shot to the shot list and like that's one of the first things that we need to shoot on this to like solve for that issue.
It's amazing how much can be pre-visualized before you ever go to production, that I think from storyboards to just actually cutting them together into an animatic and seeing it play out and lay in the voiceover and lay in the music, where there's kind of like a whole class of like let's say marketing teams who don't realize that this is actually able to be done in a fashion where you're like, oh, I can really see 85% of what this is going to end up being afterwards.
I forget what director said this, but he was talking about like the 3 stages of production and how the production day itself has the least creative done on it. It is just an execute day. It is we have talked about everything ahead of time. We know exactly what we are doing here. It is just coming in to execute what the creative that has already been decided is.
Yeah. I think Ed, our producer, says it well too. And he's like, I know I've done my job if I show up to set and I more or less end up just kind of sitting around, because everything's been coordinated to happen. The individuals who have their jobs are pulling the triggers at the right time, doing their thing. We've built a machine to then run that day, as opposed to like how things were done by us years ago. I think the other thing that changed that leads to our third core value, which is aesthetic is everything, is I'm not a DP.
I'm not a DP
anymore. I think Mike probably just choked in his mouth a little bit, threw up in his mouth. I don't direct anymore. I don't go to Walmart the night before a shoot to stock up on props, and keep them in my trunk and be the only one who knows that they're there anymore.
I'm not doing sound, holding a boom pole and looking over at the camera to make sure it's still rolling and that it's happening.
Yeah. It's like all of these things that you could do, it was capable of being done, but it never led to the best result. Yeah. And to adhere to the aesthetic being the best, I wouldn't even say the best quality, but in the best alignment with what the final piece needs to be. You need to, I think, let go of that kind of jack of all trades mentality and lean into individualized expertises to create the most aesthetically accurate piece. I think when we were talking about aesthetic is everything, Al, you had kind of said it well, and I wrote it down, having intention in everything you're choosing. It doesn't necessarily mean, aesthetic is everything doesn't necessarily mean everything looks premium, but it looks intentional to what it's supposed to be. Even if it's supposed to look like UGC, just organic content, it is still done intentionally.
Yeah.
And again, there's a place for it where you're like, I do this style, this is what we do, and look, and you could come to us for this because we're the best at it. Versus I think the way that we approach in terms of really trying to understand the aesthetic and choices of the brand and what's going to resonate best with that, even if aesthetically it's not what we like.
Yeah.
Steve's like, I would like to do aesthetically what I like.
Hey, I feel like that's the thing. When you're pitching something, you're always going to pitch what you're creatively
it's you can't help it.
Yeah. You have to take, their brand, and then how does it tweak or fit into how does it influence the idea that I had or whatever to kind of make something new out of it.
Yeah.
But still connects to what they're looking for and their problems that they need to solve.
Right. You're just waiting for that health brand or insurance agency that's actually branded Star Wars themed.
No, I want to
I'm ready. I've been ready for this.
I want a reenactment video. Anyone who's listening, I want to do a reenactment video from the 40s or 50s or 60s. And I've had this idea. I feel so many times that I pitch it to everyone and everyone's like, yeah, that's great. It sounds like a really expensive idea.
Well, we were in a meeting one time, and I remember this specifically. We were pitching, and we were going through the three concepts, and this was back when you always did it in person.
Yeah.
And the response that you got, I'll tell the story. You could correct it. Was there was a woman who said, "Man, I think we need to go this direction. Let's call it
idea
B."
Two. It was idea 2.
It was, okay. I'm still going to tell it. It was idea 2. You're like, I think we still need to go that direction, but I I almost want to do this other one. Was it idea 3?
Yes.
I'm guessing. Perfect. Because I can just feel how passionate you are about it. Is that basically accurate?
Yeah. It probably wasn't the right choice for them.
You can nearly taste victory.
It was so close.
Giving 3, let's call free ideas up front. Maybe sometimes a 4th wild card idea. That's we listened to what you want to achieve, but we didn't listen to anything else. Here's an idea. Plays right into our 4th, right? Are we on 4? Which is the best experience. Yeah. So, it's so, I think, ingrained in how we think about things as a studio that we were already talking about it off the get-go. You're getting more than a production. You're getting you're getting an experience and you're also being walked through a process. So I'll shout out to Joel Pilger from awesome consultant in our industry. And he shares a story about when he ran a studio called Impossible Pictures, that they were working with a client and the whole process of production went through. And at the end of the day, by the skin of their teeth, they pulled off what they were looking to achieve. And like, it looked good. It all happened. It made it on time. I don't remember the exact thing that was the pressure, whether it was time or some crazy creative or something like that. And basically the conversation that I'll probably butcher was Joel went to the client and said, man, like, we did it. We pulled it off. We made it happen. And he goes, you know what? Like, you did. I'll never work with you again. But you did, but you achieved it. He's like, and I remember him kind of sharing this story and this epiphany moment of like, wow, we went on this creative journey that we're like, man, can we pull this off? And that was the studio's challenge to overcome. But the problem shouldn't have been still passed on to the client to experience what he then referred to as like, you had me up at night wondering if this was actually going to be able to happen, which I think at the time I heard this story, which was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, we were already kind of thinking along this lines and using a lot of analogies around like you go to a restaurant and you order something and you also experience the service, not just the final product. But I think that story always sticks with me in terms of how we provide the best experience.
Yeah.
The best experience, I think, also stems from we're serving a business need. We're not like creating content for a film festival. Mm-hmm. We're not just creating like our thing, like our baby to make.
Yeah. I think the other thing with that too is, and I was telling Allie this the other day that like a lot of the work that we do is direct to client. And we really enjoy that type of work because we get to be closer to them and their brand and like what they're bringing to the table. But with that also like takes away the like agency piece of it.
Yeah.
That then like puts some of that responsibility on us.
Certainly.
And like, you know, we need to learn how they like to work and like what things they like to do. And every client is different in that aspect. And so like the first project with a client is always the like us learning how they like to operate and what things they like to do. And we are there to guide and like teach them and say like, hey, like this idea like could be shifted like this and then it could work really well. And like, that's typically how we end up doing things. But I feel like a lot of times too, like clients come in and I'm like, oh, this isn't what I thought I was going to be doing for this piece, you know? And like, we have a couple clients that are like, they're very hands-on and they want to be hands-on and to like, then be like, all right, like how do I shift like how we work with things? And like, how do I involve them more in the process so that they can see like more than like production companies typically like to do. But, you know, incorporate them into that piece, you know, and we have a client who we do a lot of work with. And whenever we're on set, like he knows where this is going. Like it's a project that we don't typically do a lot of editing for.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like library content shooting. And so he knows what he's going to use this for. He knows where he wants to put this on the website. And so he always has like very specific requests. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, because he knows exactly what he wants out of this. And to like give him the freedom to like tell me these things and feel like he can be open and have those conversations, like that's just going to give him what he wants in the end because that's who it's for.
Yeah. We can get in our own way by thinking, well, what they want to do is increase market share or get more eyeballs. Like these are the business goals, which inevitably you are serving as well. But there's like this human element that we kind of forget. We're like, man, you could go rogue and kind of be like, this is what's going to work better for you. I know best. And you kind of circumvent the person that you're actually serving because we're serving the client, not the client's client. We talk about this where it's like when someone has really critical feedback or is very, very like hands in, like they might have just had a conversation months before even working with us from their boss who like, they're on thin ice, right? Like they have pressures that we aren't aware of that could be internal, like culturally within their organization. There's so many other things beyond just the end goal. And we kind of need to feel those things out a little bit too, and understand like we're serving this person to get content that's going to be effective for them, but we're also serving them to get what they're asking for. And sometimes it's not always the same.
I think it's funny to like be the bridge of the gap between like contractors and corporate America and like navigating that. Like, and almost being like the translator for like, cause like we're taking like the corporate America language and turning it into something that like the contractors are helping us create, but we have to navigate and manage both teams a little bit. I don't know. It's just funny to me.
I always tease Ed whenever he says like a really production term to a client, and I can just like see them just like just sailing straight
like
over their
question mark
head.
above their head.
It's so funny because we are like bridging the gap of the expertise that we carry, but we're also thinking so much more about what the client's looking for than other team members who are focused on making sure the audio is pristine, right? Or making sure different things look in certain ways.
I think that was one of like the biggest shifts with the company when you kind of did like realize that like, hey, it's like more than just the two of us, and like there's just things that we're bad at, and to like start, you know, crewing out the team and like finding people who were better than we were. Like there was like a very little ego about like, you know, like, I think I'm a really good shooter. Like, I think I'm like a really good DP, but like, let's just find like someone who's like outclassing us in every area of these pieces and start like bringing them into the fold and like finding those people and kind of like managing the creative as opposed to like being the creative.
For me, there was an additional component that I would think about that like, there was something I was running from. And what I was running from was stagnancy. And I had seen so often, especially early on, the first couple of years of the studio and just kind of like trying to get a lay of the land of like, what does production look like in Connecticut and the tri-state area, and like who's doing what and who's a studio, but they're really a person. And they were operating in the same way as we were, where it's like, hey, this person's like the owner and the director and the DP and owns all the gear. And they had like a henchman who would like do a thing because they realized they're like, well, I can't like, you know, do totally everything. I need someone to carry my bags. So, right. And like, you'd watch that where you're like, oh, maybe this person is just like an individual and they want it to be this way. They want to be kind of like a one-man band forever, but it wasn't building a company. It wasn't building like a team, a community of people who could work together. And I think that's always the, I couldn't agree more. That's always the direction I was most like interested in heading to. Yeah. In terms of that leading to what was our fifth core value, this idea of like always be learning. Yeah. That to me was one of the things I was like, I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to like be stuck in a place where like I think I should do everything and have my hands in everything. Like I want other people to have the spotlight. I want other people to have the opportunity to like lead creative. I want other people to like develop deep relationships with the clients. If I do this like just by myself, it's just never going to be more than just that.
For me, I think always be learning literally did lead to me always learning and like always pushing to like, what's the next like thing I'm going to watch to learn? And like, what's the next YouTube tutorial I should watch? And one of our like the third office, the way that it was set up was the couch was in front of my computer. And so in that time when we had people come in, they would sit in front of me and like watch a TV. And I always loved that because I could like pull up a tutorial on my second monitor and like throw my headphones on. And like while they're watching me work, I'm like listening to a tutorial for like how to do the thing that they're asking for.
As like, wow, see, that's amazing. You just know how to do that one very specific thing.
But yeah, I feel like from like the early Andrew Kramer days of like watch this After Effects tutorial video, and like that was like my like always be learning something new, like always be pushing. And I think there was like there was a meme pretty recently that like really resonated with me that was like creatives need time to do nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is like such an important thing in like the busyness of our work, and that there's always like something that needs to be done for a client, but to like start taking that time to pause and like schedule time that like we are just messing around and like trying new things, and to like make that time as important as like, you know, working on project time, because I feel like that is how you push and learn new things. Like you just kind of like go do it, and if it fails, it doesn't matter. There's not like stakes in like it being a thing. Like I feel there's nothing more stressful than like someone coming into your office and being like, hey, we have to do this 3D phone render animation. Have you ever done that before? And you're like, no. And you're like, great, go do that.
Alex like, this is my life.
Like, go do that, and it's gonna go on a broadcast commercial in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
So like nothing about that feels good.
No.
But like to go into Alex's office and say, hey, I want you to like go play around with this for, you know, the day and like see what comes out of it. And like, if it's cool, great. And if it's not, I'll let you know. Yeah. And like that environment to like always be learning, I think is where that core value for me really hit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think for me, it most exists. My world is mainly kind of like the sales, the business processes, like operations and things like that. And so like streamlining those, finding automations, and like developing that side of the studio, like is what I think I see most of our peers or like bigger successful studios do. You need to have the creative brain, the business brain, like you need to spread it out, right?
I will give you a shout out for Always Be Learning, because we like to do this sometimes with like the morning meetings where we shout out people for like when they've done something.
That's
like,
not true. We never do that, Steve. That you're lying.
Well, I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna do a retroactive one for the last like baker's dozen years of time.
That's good. Is that 12 years?
Dustin on Always Be Learning when it comes to the business side of the business, because I feel like 13 years ago, if you asked Dustin about business, his answers would be drastically different than now. And I feel like the Always Be Learning of we should probably have an accountant team that answers these things. We should probably get like automated payments set up and lawyers. And I shouldn't have to cut a check and put it on Steve's desk that he's not going to cash. And I'm not going to ask me to like put in my hours on a physical piece of paper and hand it to you. That was like the really early days.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, it does make me miss the one thing. And I don't know if I could ever find this song again, because I don't know what it's called, but there was something about like,
I have it.
You do?
I'm pretty sure I have a video of you with it somewhere.
Where when it was just me and Steve in the office, it would be like Payday.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have the Payday one, but
and I would what I would do is I started playing, I would just slowly turn it up, do whatever. It was some hip hop song about getting paychecks and stuff, and I would like just walk across. It was just me and Steve. Like at the end of the day, it was only for my enjoyment because he didn't like it, and so I'd be walking across with the paycheck to this song, and it just interrupt whatever you were doing. Steve would be like you know, neck deep in an edit, like really going, and then probably over his headphones slowly here, like what is going on? And dude, it was Payday.
My other like very deviated story from this is, so back when Dustin used to give me checks for everything, I'm so bad at cashing checks. And this was like, I don't know if it was pre being able to do it on your phone, but it felt like it was, at least for me and my brain at the time.
Prehistoric.
So yeah, so you had to go to the ATM and like cash a check. So there was like a point where I had like 4 or 5 checks that I had not cashed, and I was driving back from a concert that I went to in Philly, and at like the rest stop that we stopped at was a Bank of America ATM outside it, and I was like, this is the perfect place to cash $4,000 worth of checks, and the machine ate all of them. And it gave me an error message and then just like restarted the ATM.
Oh my God.
So like I'm like panicking, and I like called Bank of America at like the parking lot, and the guy's like, yeah, like, you know, no problem. Like, you know, how much money do you think was in there? Like, I'll just credit you for the account. Like, I'll credit your account for that amount of money. And like in his brain, he's like, he probably cashed like $100 check, like no big deal. And I was like, I was somewhere like $4,500. And he was like, why are you cashing that at a rest stop ATM?
He's like, who did you just kill?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So the guy was very nice and he was like, yep, we're going to put $4,000 in your account. I would recommend not spending the money until we can like get someone had to go to the ATM and like get my checks out of the ATM and like piece them back together. At least in my brain, that's what he had to do to like find out what was actually there. Yeah. And it took like a year and a half before like that money actually was in my account for real.
That's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And I was off by like $800. So like all of a sudden, like 2 years later, I just get like an $800 credit. I'm like, huh. What's that from? And I like looked into it, just that.
This is actually what led to the 2008 market crash. Was Steve seized up Bank of America with his $4,000, and they're like, "What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Halt operations for Steve?"
Yeah, direct deposit's pretty good.
Yeah. You know, we've come a long way.
Shout out Gusto,
right? Shout out to
Gusto and the little animations they send us.
Yeah, if you want
the Gusto animation replaced your payday song.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. I mean, there was something they knew about millennials as business owners or as workers that they're like, we need an animation when you get a payday. We need a unicorn to fly across your screen. Asana, I think Monday.com does a narwhal.
One of them. I can't remember which one it is, and I feel like it's like Ed will tell me, but like it starts off and it's like a placeholder text for like you filling in your scene title, and it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's really special. I was like, damn it, they know me. Yeah, they know me.
Everybody just gets their favorite movie.
I'll deviate one more time.
Yeah,
please. I tell you because it's a client story and it's part of the best experience.
Okay. This is the best experience.
Yeah,
for
I don't
me
think I told you this. This is very recent.
Oh gosh.
So we.
Lord help.
So if anyone who's seen my office knows that I'm a Star Wars fan because it's just Star Wars things everywhere.
Yeah.
I got an email from a client that we had done work for, and I interviewed him twice, I think, and like we've maybe been on like a call like once.
Sure.
And it's like very little conversation outside of like work things. I got an email from him like 3 days ago that he had an accident or he had surgery in December. So he was pretty much like stuck on his couch since December.
Yeah.
And so he started watching The Mandalorian out of just like, he had never watched a piece of Star Wars content ever in his life, watched the first season of The Mandalorian, and now since then has consumed every piece of Star Wars content that's ever existed.
Wow.
And he sent me an email being like, I know you're a pretty big Star Wars fan. And it was definitely like he wanted someone to talk about like these things about, because like, who else do you have type of thing.
His wife's like, shut up.
So he sent me like a really long email about like how he's like fully engulfed in like the process now, and like he like loves it so much. And I sent him an email back, and I like captioned it with like, "May the Force be with you, Steve."
I feel like in some ways there's this weird like you gave him and I'm so glad we don't have an HR department yet, but like you gave him a bump of Coke. And now he's just like, whoa, like you introduced like a whole thing and now I'm just picturing
he's like
him
telling
like
me how he's reading the books to his kids and everything. It's like, it's hilarious.
Exactly. It's generational now, this addiction.
He's in.
It's like,
it's a family and he's a part of it.
You've changed the trajectory of what his family experiences from him.
Yes.
It's amazing. That's really special. Wow. Well, I guess, should we put that under the best experience?
Yeah,
possibly.
I think so. Maybe.
Bump it up into that.
I don't know that it really fits anywhere. I just hadn't told you the story yet.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think, I mean, speaking of your Star Wars themed office, our 6, the core values, disagree and commit, which I also enjoy Star Wars. We used to, when I was younger, we would watch through the original 3, which I'm sure has a name for the original 3, which is
the original trilogy.
Oh, sure. Okay. I guess
episodes 4, 5, and 6.
I guess it was just that simple. And those we would watch through like kind of like once a week. I think we'd watch one, and the next week we would watch like another one, or maybe they're back-to-back nights. I don't remember. When you're 8, like what do you remember?
Yeah.
And so I am a fan, but one of the things we've been doing recently, we've been decorating the office, right? Because we were kind of a little squeezy, we were a little bursting at the seams, and we rearranged some things to more maximize the space, which feels a lot better, but we need to decorate. And so one of the things was kind of decorating the main room, where I'd bring in something, let's say a couch that's maybe puffy and in green. And you'd be like, whoa, that is ugly. And I'd be like, oh no, I like it. And so we learned, I think, and always continue to learn, to disagree and
I feel like with your design choices, I feel like I've been thinking that for a long time.
Well,
your mail holder that's in our office.
Oh
is
yeah, I don't like that either. Actually, we could take that down.
You don't like it either?
No, it's an online purchase. But disagree and commit is actually stolen straight from Amazon.
Yep.
My neighbor worked for Amazon, and we were talking because we were developing the core values within Union, like kind of putting language to them because they're just kind of intrinsic within our culture. But he said that one. I said, that one's so interesting. Disagree and commit. Basically, the idea being that bring your opposing viewpoint to the table. Don't just like go along from the beginning, but once the team chooses a direction, even if you disagree with it, you need to commit to it to the level at which you no longer feel an I told you so mentality. So you're like, I disagree with this, but I hope so much that my fears of how this could go wrong or why this wouldn't look right or why this isn't the right thing, I hope I'm wrong about that.
I think this was the easiest one for me to like put on the board for sure.
I disagree with that.
I feel like over the time that we've been working together, there has always been something that we are fighting about. Like there's just always something
passionate about.
Yeah, well, and that's what I think it is. I think that we are both very passionate people about ideas and things, and you know whatever that may be, and we're willing to fight with each other over it,
yeah,
and to like let it be that like messy back and forth. But then at like the end of the day, like there's no ego between us, and that like once the decision is made, like the other person is moving on. Yeah, and I feel like I have always felt that with you about things. Like there's definitely times where I'm like fighting with you pretty hard on things, and you're like put your foot down, like no, this is going to happen. I'm like, all right, I get it. And there's other times that like it's vice versa of that, and I'm like, I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you, and I'm like, he's got to believe me, and then he does, and then we do it, and you know, it does or doesn't work out.
Right.
But that is
in
like,
any of the circumstances.
Yeah. But I do think it's an ego thing.
Yeah.
That I think that for the entirety that we've been working together has always been able to like be put aside when like a decision needs to be made. And I feel like this is like something that a lot of like sports teams I think talk about, like the coach is the final say in that aspect. Like sure, like they're the ones that like make the final decision. But I feel like we've kind of both been that. Like it has never been like it is your final decision to make. Like I feel like it has always been a mutual thing.
And I think there's areas that like we both acknowledge that we talked about from the beginning. Over the last 13 years, my focus so much has been on entrepreneurship and business and those kind of things. And so when the decisions on that side, we probably give a level of like credit a little bit more to them. Like, I really think we need to do this if we're in equal thinking about something. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like a project or production, or even like we're setting up for this podcast and like I'm in the other room working on some things and Steve's like, not kill the third camera. We're going to blah, 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 blah. I'm like, this is Steve's world. Like 100%. I was in here before being like, yeah, 3 cameras would be perfect. Let's do that. Hey,
but I'm in the full commit stage of the podcast.
There you go. Right there you go. And I think that's like a good example of just like, nah, flip it on its head. You know, like it's exactly the ego element going out the door leads to the best results overall.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a thing recently where a guy, he's got a meeting with Warren Buffett. And he's like so excited to sit down and learn about finances and investing. And just like, he's like, I spent days coming up with like really good questions that I was going to ask for him. Like I wanted to respect his time. I was going to maximize it. But we had like half an hour to have lunch together. It was like something along those lines. He got this meeting and he sits down, and by the time he left, he wasn't able to get one question in because the whole time Warren Buffett had only asked him questions. The whole time. And you're like, they're in the same category. They're in finances, they're in investing. And he's really looking to learn from this guy. But he walked away realizing, whoa, the best people are really the ones who believe there's always more knowledge to be gained. And they're not necessarily the smartest person in the room. So welcome to the Video Village podcast. I'm Dustin. This is
Steve.
Behind the scenes here, we have
Allie.
Mike.
Alex.
Continually quieter away from the microphone. But yeah, the Union team and extended family is awesome. Everything that ever comes out great from the things we do are mainly because of all of their hands and rarely ours. Well, yours, not mine so much, but
just the idea guy.
Exactly. So anyway, yeah, this
Italian Ed's problem to figure out how I
much water if neither of these are in focus.
for sure. Yeah. Well, in that, this is the Video Build podcast. Thanks for listening. If you made it to this point, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It's pretty good.
Cue the payday song.
Yeah. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.